Okay, no problem.
Okay, so I guess everybody is gonna hear me. We are just getting set here. Aileen, if you could click the got it thing.
I did.
All right, I don't know why it's still showing up on our big screen. Anybody know why? You know why?
Maybe everyone needs to, all the participants need to.
All right, so if there are participants, well, I think Fran is the only one that's here on Zoom.
I am on Zoom. I'm unmuted and you can hear me?
I hear you.
Fran,
Okay.
if you have something showing up on your screen that says got it, just click OK, please.
Sure. I have nothing that says that, but no problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
good. All right. Well, welcome everybody. So nice to see you all. Hi. So as you are probably aware, we have been focusing on counting of the Omer, which is anybody unfamiliar with? Should I review what that is? Counting of the Omer? I'll spend like 1 second just, right. So the second day, we celebrate Passover, right? And then on the second day of Passover, we start a process of counting until the holiday of Shavuot, which is coming up a week from Friday. So we count every day from the second day of Pesach until Shavuot. Your question. Why?
Yeah.
Such a good question. Right? So it's the idea that there's something exciting coming. And you know, like, it's a little bit like the buildup, right? So in Judaism, the idea of receiving the Torah is like one of the greatest gifts we could possibly have ever been given. And we can explore what that means and why, but the idea of counting and counting up, like from 1 to 2, is the idea of going higher and higher. In my head, I always imagined that it was like climbing Mount Sinai, right? We received the Torah at Mount Sinai. So that idea of climbing, in my head, I always had a picture of climbing a mountain to get to the top. And when you get to the top, your reward is receiving this gift of Torah. Does that help make sense?
Yes.
It's like a built-in anticipation and looking forward.
So what happens? Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
We have a rule. Right? So, I mean, it's different, right? That is different. So if you think about it, the Torah is something that guides all Jewish living. So in some ways, it means something different, not more or less, but it's like what centers us together. It's where we get our rules and guidance and wisdom for how to live a meaningful, fulfilled life. So, just as a side note, right, when Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are coming, we do also have this time of what we call the month of Elul, which is supposed to be also a counting of sorts. There are things that happen during that month that are supposed to help kind of spiritually prepare us for the holidays. So in that same way, it's not like a month before the counting. And part of the other reason of the counting is on the second day of Passover, we've now entered into freedom. We're no longer slaves. So like in order to be, I'm just gonna close the door. All right.
I can do that.
She's done. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
You know something?
This is cute. You work in the town. I work in the clergy office of production.
She's my best buddy. Okay. So, so keep in mind, and that's something that I want to get into, the idea of receiving something, a gift, and is you, in some ways, to really like fully receive it. And I don't mean like a gift, like, or card, like, I mean like a gift that's really, you know, meaningful and purposeful. In some ways,
Like having a baby, like having a baby.
baby, but you have to be in a place that you're ready to receive it emotionally. So if you imagine there's these hundreds of thousands of people that left Egypt from slavery, and it takes time, you know, like they just left, it's like, I just adopted a fourth dog, right? So the dog has been on some level enslaved, right? This like adopted dog, right? Like, and it takes a transition time to be in a place that they can receive the love they're gonna get. And it's the same kind of idea. So we're sort of, there's this period of time that's supposed to be like, what does it mean that so the Israelites definitely had a certain thing that they were enslaved by, right? Which was Pharaoh and the Egyptians, right? In our modern day, we don't, thank God, have that scenario. But there are probably things on some level that have enslaved us, maybe traumatized us, or emotionally enslaved us. And I think part of Rabbi Karen Kadar's book that we've been sort of focusing on about the Omer is she came up with these 7 principles each of the 7 weeks that are supposed to help guide you to how to feel ready to be in a position to receive a gift. Like what's been enslaving you? Like what choices have you made in the past that you were or weren't happy with, right? Like some of the principles were discern, like how to know how to like solve a puzzle, an emotional puzzle, right? How to know what choices to make, how to imagine, right? Like all of those things. So that sort of covers the idea of like, why are we doing this in the first place? Why are we counting? It's just supposed to help put us in a more thoughtful, reflective place. And they're just little sparks to help put us in that frame of mind. Right? So the week, what we're on this week, which is the second to last week, we have this week and then we have next week, and then it's Shavuot. So this week, the focus was on courage. And there's a few things that I would like to focus on in that discussion. But what I'd like to do is also make it a time for sharing and talking. And so just maybe go around quickly. If you want, like, just like say your name just in case nobody knows it, which is unlikely. And then maybe just say one sentence of something that, I'm just gonna to say something that you've done in your life that made you feel like you had courage. Right? So, I mean, I can start, get it going. And I also want to mention, that in order to do that, right, I know it's a big ask, and we're going to talk about the word vulnerable, but the idea of being vulnerable is being willing to share maybe something personal or that's hard to share, right? So I think if you're comfortable getting into this vulnerable space and being willing to share, you know, it takes courage to be vulnerable. So one of the things that I'll throw out there is that you may not realize this about me since I'm on the bima all the time singing, but I used to be terrified to sing in public, like absolutely terrified. And when I was, you know, a kid in like 8th grade and in high school, my mom used to invite people over and she would play the piano and ask me to sing for people, and I had to sing with my back to them. Cause I felt so scared to be seen. Like, what am I gonna do? I don't want them to see me. If it was one of those, if see me. Right. And I'm almost 48 now, so like it's taken some time, but I figured out how to be comfortable standing in front of people. How did I break? A lot of therapy. She asked, how did I get over that? I loved singing so much that it was worth figuring out, but it took a lot of years. So, I don't know, does anyone feel like,
I can share.
here's good share?
Well,
What's your name?
my name is Kira. I immigrated twice, once to Israel and once here, so that took some courage.
What's the word? I didn't hear what you said, too.
Sorry,
She didn't hear what you said.
I immigrated twice, once from Ukraine to Israel and once from Israel to the USA.
Yeah, I didn't, okay.
And another time that I remember that I kind of gained some courage is when I applied for a position in Israel, and I really felt that I was right for that position, but no one called me. And I just called them and asked for the manager, and I said, listen, you have to at least see me because I'm really like, I have all the skills that you need. There's no reason for you not to take it. And I got the job. So,
Yes, that took a lot of courage.
yeah.
Or chutzpah.
That too.
Whichever one. That's okay.
Read your train.
Take your time, breathe. Anyone?
I think of courage when like dramatic things happen in your life, and I had the courage. To go with that. Okay, those are like dramatic and death and moving. But then I thought to myself, when I got the job as a volunteer director for all of the Jewish agencies here, when I moved here, they asked me to like speak in front of groups. And then they asked me to do workshops. And then, and I first I didn't know how to instruct a workshop, and then I didn't even know how to speak. I ended up doing international conferences and speaking in front of very big groups. And speaking in front of boards and everything that I never in my life thought I could do. And I did it. I did it scared. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was scared. I did it. And yeah, so I'm thinking that kind of took some courage for me to do that, not knowing how to do it in some ways.
It's amazing.
And I'd much now rather speak in front of workshops than have to go shopping for clothes.
That's your next step.
That's
No.
Yeah.
I had taken a degree in administration and supervision because I wanted to leave the classroom. I took a job in Brooklyn as.
What is your name? I didn't get your name.
You know my name is Anita. I had been a classroom teacher and I had taken an administration and supervision degree because one of my supervisors told me he thought that I would do well in that. So eventually someone recommended me for a job in Brooklyn and I went and I got the job. And I hated it. I just absolutely hated it. I was in a really horrible situation. And the summer came and we were off for 1 month in the summer. And I went to a conference at the end of that summertime. And I was told that I was being transferred to another school because I was one of 3 white administrators in a black school. And in those days, they could actually say something to you like that, we're transferring you to another school because the PTA doesn't want you here. And I said, no, thank you. I didn't say it immediately, I went home and thought about it. But the next morning I said, no, thank you, I'm going back to the classroom. And I called my ex-principal where I had tenure and I said, it was the middle of the night actually when he came home from camp. And he heard my voice and he said, I guess it's welcome back, Anita. He said, don't worry about it, just come in. Of course, when I got back and I went back into the classroom, I could hear, I worked in a school, 5,300 kids and a big staff. I could hear behind my back, she couldn't make it as an administrator. And it took courage for me to put my face out there and continue on as a teacher, which I did for a year, and then I took another administrative job. But I remember how terrified I was about going back. Because it looked like I had failed. And I had thought I had done a terrific job in that school. They just didn't want me because I was white.
You don't say that to someone, you can't make it administrative, they don't know if you can or not.
Excuse me?
I said, you should say to somebody, you can't make it, you can't make it administrative, that's not nice, you should say, what can we do to help you make
Right.
you a better administrator?
That's not the way it was.
I just sent a chat. Read the chat, Michelle.
Okay, sorry. All right, thank you, thank you so much for sharing, we're gonna keep it going, but everybody has so Margaret, we're talking about just to quickly introduce yourself and one example of when you felt you showed courage in your life, and I'm gonna share Fran's, who said, read out loud. Moving to Boca for 12 months, instead of taking a vacation for 7 days, taking a chance, buying a condo, moving from Atlantic City, New Jersey to Boca, meeting people and finding a job was scary, and at times still is scary, right? So there's a little bit of a common theme, as we do this, which is stepping into a situation that we don't know what the outcome will be, and it's being willing to accept uncertainty. That's a choice, taking the choice to throw ourselves into something uncertain. So, anyone else?
So when I was 2, my family and I left during the war. And after we were able to escape Europe, we went to Brazil, and from Brazil now I'm 6 years old, and we are going to be smuggled into Argentina. And my parents kind of prepared me, there would be barbed wires, there would be a boat, there would be police, you have to be quiet. I'm 6 years old. I can still remember that very well.
Wow.
So, but it gave me strength. I could do anything after that, nothing was scary anymore,
Where in Europe did you escape from?
I'm sorry.
Where in Europe?
I was born in Belgium. And so, there were other times and other things that occurred, but I think that trip was I think that's the most, but I was brave. In fact, I started to cook. It was a little boat, and I started to cook, and the MPs were not the far. And big hand came into my mouth, fishing, because it was the man who was guiding the boat, little boat. And I started to cough. You put this fishy, smelly, and it was so bad that I stopped coughing, and I was gagging. And that was something that was very unpleasant. But,
Judy. You gotta unmute, Judy.
My name is Judy Kornitsky, and my story is about the failure of courage. When I was about, 10 or 11, I spent the summer at the New England Conservatory of Music, and I was so thrilled to be there, playing the piano, and I met with my teacher once a week, and I just liked the whole atmosphere. It was great. Well, the end of the summer, we were having a recital in Jordan Hall, which was also very prestigious. Well, as it came closer and closer, I got more and more nervous. And I said to my parents, I can't do this. They let me withdraw. And I got a telegram from my teacher who lived across the whole state of Massachusetts. Please don't do this. You'll do fine, blah, blah. And my parents set a pattern for me for a lot of years that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I went the other way. And I took a whole lifetime to face uncomfortable situations because I always was allowed to squeak out of them. So I don't know if that's a story of courage or the lack of it,
Well,
but it affected me my whole life.
I think it's also courage to fail out
Acknowledge
of
it.
something. When I was, sorry, I'm like not trying to pull focus here. Just like to support your point, I studied master's degree in Israel and I had like horrible panic attacks and I was so miserable, but my upbringing was to never quit anything. Like you need to persevere and you need to continue. And it took me a lot of courage to say, no, this is not good for me. But it's like also like a lack of courage on the other hand. But sometimes I think that if that's what you need, you know, this is the best for you, then, right?
right, that's you. It's about, so, and the other thing that I want to point out is that all of these things, which also take courage, and sometimes we don't identify that takes courage, which is to listen to your gut instinct. Right, sometimes like everybody is in a different place in their relationship with their gut instinct. Right, some people can talk to it and feel like it's right there with them all the time. And for other people, it's buried for one reason or another. But it takes courage to listen to yourself. And it takes time to figure out what's my gut instinct and what perhaps is fear, and which one is the right one. And sometimes it just takes practice to know, you know, which one is which, you know, like, you know, when you were saying a panic attack, when people are afraid, right, as many of you probably know, there's a fight or flight response. Right, and in order to know which response to choose, you have to know yourself really well to know which is the right response for the right situation. Which just comes with knowing yourself. Philip wrote in the chat, before I sold real estate, raise your hand, Philip. I was a paralegal in a large New York City law firm. I was making really good money and had great benefits, and I was bored. I decided I wanted to sell real estate. My parents told me I was crazy to leave a well-paying job with a vacation, benefits, etc., to leave it for an all-commission job with no benefits. I did it. There were definitely ups and downs financially, but in the long run, I've had a successful career in real estate sales for almost 50 years. Like, also amazing, right? And it's not just the fact that he did it that once, it's the lessons, as Judy, as you were saying, that you teach yourself by making those choices. It gives you then the confidence, like you were saying, like, oh, now that's no problem. Like when you do something once, you get either confidence or knowledge, to make other choices moving on. Does anyone else want to say that?
Hi, I'm Maddie. I couldn't think of anything, and then I realized that when I was about 14, I was in, I think, 14, 8th grade. There was this girl who actually lived across the street from me. This is in Queens, New York, who would bully me off and on. And she bullied me when I was on the bus quite a bit. She rallied the other kids. And one day, and it wasn't premeditated at all, I just got this feeling, enough is enough. So when I got off the bus, I probably got off on the front and she was getting off the back. I waited for her and I confronted her about it. And I guess she didn't want to know from it. And I started to physically push her and she pushed me back. Ended up that I beat her up.
Oh my God.
Because I mean, I had that pent up anger and she wouldn't back down. And then she reported it to the school, and my mother was called and my mother told them the story and she was reprimanded. I had no consequences. She was reprimanded.
Wow, good.
But it took a huge amount of courage. Bullying, you know, I don't know if you know, it's awful. And you know, you feel, especially at that age as a teenager, you feel like, you know, you're alone and everybody's getting up against you. But something happened, I guess, whatever it is inside me that
yeah,
set enough is enough.
It's good that they reacted like that, because I feel like nowadays you would get in
Yeah.
trouble anyway, even though you were not the instigator, but like you're not supposed to defend
Right, you're
yourself
not supposed to
in the
do-
way you seem, you deem necessary.
I just happened to have had an administrator who was just such a kind, gentle soul. I remember her. And she just wanted it ended. And maybe because that person had a reputation.
Right. And Margaret, it's okay if you don't want to now.
I'm just. No one would ever understand, would know this. I have a very low self-esteem. I look for a man and it was constant. I mean, I can look at it now. It took me a long time to decide that I was going to get divorced. And for so many reasons, you get a family, children, the whole thing. And so that took courage. And I've told everybody, just last month, left a place that I've been with, for what, 20-some years, whatever. I just wasn't happy anymore. I went someplace new. Well, you go someplace new, you have to prove yourself again. And so I'm there. We'll see. Don't say it.
What? No, that's a lie, it's a lie.
Walker started that the week we started on decision.
Oh,
I had already done
there
it.
you
Yeah.
go.
This whole thing of counting it Omer, I was like, I had already done this thing, and I'm thinking, my God, this is what I've been,
This is
what I
the
did.
process.
Yeah, so it's been a very good program.
Oh, that's so good, that's so
Yeah.
good. So people, Fran and Philip are also writing. I want to move on to the next part, but Philip wrote being gay, Jewish, and bad at sports. We are all probably experienced like some sense of, bullying, for reasons, so I wanted to share, so as Kira well knows, one of my, I'm just gonna say like mentor, hero, not someone I know, is this woman, Brene Brown. If anybody's ever listened,
Mine too.
I mean, holy cow, if you don't know who she is,
Oh, yeah.
if you go to Netflix and you just search for Brene Brown, she has the most watched TED Talk of all time. There's one called Call to Courage, Dare to Lead. She's a social worker, but researches emotions such as shame and vulnerability and courage. So what she's done so beautifully is, for a lot of people that maybe didn't believe in the value of processing those emotions, she made it science-based. So now, huge company, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Google, all these massive, biggest organizations on the planet call her in to build leadership by starting to talk about vulnerability. Fran, I'm gonna put it in the chat, what her name is for you, Brene Brown.
Did she write The Gift of Imperfection?
Yes.
Yes, that was my first book.
Yes, the best book ever,
Wow.
best book. So,
I'm actually using her book now to write my own, and it's giving me total direction.
oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, she is amazing.
She's amazing,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things that I love, and you'll hear it if you listen to one of her talks, is that, and I thought it was the most relatable example of vulnerability, which is that when, like, imagine you're watching a movie and you see this amazing happy family and their dog or dogs in the car, and they're on like a road trip, and everybody's singing and happy, and they're going somewhere and having the greatest time ever. What's your immediate reaction?
Wish that was something like that.
What's about to happen? Like, right, you know what I mean? Like, who's with a terminal illness? What cliff are they about to drive over? What awful thing is about to happen? Anytime, because like it's a strategy in movies that as soon as you're comfortable, something, and something awful is gonna happen.
Not
Right?
only in the movie.
It's not only in the movies, it's in your everyday life. Oh, I'm going for like a checkup because I cut my finger, and then you find out, something horrible, right? Right? I mean, yes, it's horrible.
The
And
difference between movies and real life is that in real life, it's true.
it's
In
true,
movies,
yes,
They find a cure for this remote disease and everybody's happy.
yes,
That's
sometimes
not
that
real.
happens. Right, but
So
the,
that happens in the movies.
Yes.
Not in real life.
That doesn't.
huh?
So the older movies, anything that happened,
Yeah, not so much anymore.
So much now.
They changed it.
Right. If you think about it, though, that idea that, something bad's about to happen really does rob our joy of the moments that are good, and understandably, right? And so what we do is we stop ourselves on some level from enjoying the good, because we're like, what's the point? Something horrible is about to happen, and I can tell you, like, what a beautiful moment it is when I take my daughter to the bus, and now when I do it, I kiss her goodbye, and I'm like, please let there not be a shooting today. You know what I mean? Like, it's impossible not to go to these places. And one of the things Brene Brown talks about is, how can we not let that fear of why do we put that fear in our head? Right, and I like why would we specifically intentionally ruin a beautiful moment with a thought like that? Like, what's its value? What does it benefit us?
I have read that our brain, I guess because of our ancestral heritage, is geared toward negativity as a survival mode.
Yeah,
That we will tend to see something that's at fault or wrong, and that we retain that vestigial stimulus and reaction.
yeah. I think that we think it protects us from the shock of the pain when something bad happens. Cause it's like, well, no, I knew something bad would happen, I just didn't know when.
I get it, because so often I'll do something or have something going on or plan something. Something does happen, I'm thinking, well, it never would have occurred to me that this bad thing could have happened or that or something like that. I see that, not infrequently.
Yes, it happens, that's what life is, like, so one of the things that, if you think about, which I know I put in my Shabbat message and we talked about in other things, is that it takes courage, as we say in the Mishaberach that we say on Friday nights, to make your life a blessing. Right? Like, if you think about, we often don't do that verse on Friday nights because we're often pressed for time and not, can't go past a certain time or whatever. But the first verse of the Mishaberach, say the source of strength. Think about it, the source of strength. Like, where am I gonna go to find my strength? Who bless the people before me, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. Right?
I think it also takes me to what you started with, the Omer process, because I think it's also having the skills to realize that you're not living in the moment, and you like my husband is always worried about something, like he cannot stop this ruminating, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need? We need to this, like he cannot enjoy the moment. And it's not that he doesn't want to, I think he just lacks the
skill, right?
And he needs this process of discerning and deciding and finding tools or whatever, and like.
Right, so what happens is when you start just unpacking it the way we are, it puts you more in a place to receive the gift of Torah. Because if you're constantly like sheltering yourself and protecting yourself from feelings that that you're afraid to feel because it can't be this good, because that means something bad's gonna happen. If you're constantly doing that, it's hard also to receive what Judaism feels is the ultimate gift, which is Torah, which I want to also talk about in a minute. But I wanted to share a few, this is also Brené Brown quotes. There, so hold on, hold on, slideshow from current slide.
On
What's
the
the name
bottom,
of this book?
also the bottom.
I'm sorry, I missed the name of the book.
These aren't all necessarily from books, these are quotes that I collected from her various things that I put all sort of together, but she has, I don't know if the name of the book is The Call to Courage is the name of the talk. But even if you go to YouTube and put her name, millions of things come up that are like 1 minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you know, you can even listen in your car. So
I think this was also in her book Atlas of the Heart. This is
Oh,
the
yeah,
latest.
that's.
her latest book is Atlas of the Heart.
Amazing.
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 What's it called? Atlas of the Heart. Oh, my God. Hardcover with this big.
So I love this. And again, she was giving this talk to the Air Force, right? That this quote came out of: vulnerability is our most accurate way to measure courage. Vulnerability allows us to assess fearlessness. We can measure how brave you are by how vulnerable you're willing to be. There is no courage without vulnerability. And this came from a talk out of having worked with people in the army, right? And Judith, as you were saying, when you think of like courage, sometimes like, you know, you're imagining like soldiers and doing like superhuman things, but yet what they're saying, what came out of talking with people who go into battles is that, no, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You know, now vulnerability may be defined differently, you know, maybe based on a situation. But it's an interesting thing to, as we get closer to the Shavuot, and just to think about in your daily life, what does it mean to be vulnerable? And how could the willingness to be vulnerable contribute to a meaningful life? Yeah.
I was about 17 years old, and I was in college. I was maybe in college. And we had to stand up and give our speech. And my voice did not travel that much unless they were big mic. So we was talking, and I was fine, and the person said to me, I would like you to move up closer. So keep in mind, the administrative people, they're all the big shots with it, you know, everybody, if you like them, make you see coming here, you know what I mean, big stuff. So they said to me, closer. So I did, and I flipped off that stage. Oh, no. You should mind it. So. Tonight's history, I think you should stop. I said, I'm not going to stop. I want to continue. This is me. He said, then of course, I did everything else. And they told me afterwards, oh, liability, they told me, gotta go to jail. I didn't even hit my head. And everything else, because they want my head x-ray, my head x-ray, and everything else.
Yeah. Look, there was a time, when we did one of the kids' services in the high holidays, Reverend Dan walked out and fell on his face. I mean, in a Superman costume. So, like, it happens, you know, yeah.
You're young. Some of us are older.
Oh, God.
The older you get, well, courage it takes to put one foot in front of the other and go forward.
Why? Why is that?
Because you suddenly become aware of the fact that the only real currency in this world that you cannot replace is time. Time.
But also, I think it's because I was thinking about that the other day, and I came up with the idea that, you know, infancy fast, it goes fast, right? toddler, it goes fast. The childhood, before you know it, you're an adolescent. Then you're in adulthood. And here's this period from adulthood all the way up to, say, in the 80s or something, when you're definitely an adult, but you're a little bit more like on this side, senior. And then you have this little bit of time, who knows how long left, to adapt to this new stage. So it becomes a stage for older people where we need a great deal of courage and a great deal of support. And in this country, but also in the Western countries, we don't support the older people quite the same as they used to anyway in Asia. So I, as an 85-year-old who never felt vulnerable in terms of, I always thought that I could do something, as I said before, it always gave me the courage to do anything and everything I wanted to do. All of a sudden in my 80s, it's so different. And I seek that courage because I didn't have the time to adjust to it. But isn't it strange that from the time you become an adult, 21 or something, until all the way that you're 71, 81, it's a big chunk of time. Yourself as an adult. And then all of a sudden there's this old age, and you start quick as you're adolescent. Yeah. And it makes it, I'm not happy that I talk about it because it made me more depressed.
No, but here's the thing, I'm not obviously at that stage yet, right? So I'm sure that it's easier for me to say, I will, right? My mother reminds me every day, okay? There's a quote, I forget who said it. One of the quotes that the rabbis tend to say before we say Kaddish, and for sure they say it at every funeral, is, and it's part of a poem and it's in the prayer book, is it's a fearful thing to love what death can touch, right? But in some ways that it applies to your own self, right? It's scary to embrace loving yourself, knowing that it's only a matter of time for everybody, some less or more than others. It's scary, so like, how do you live with that in a way that doesn't stop you from enjoying? And then it's okay if it stops you from enjoying sometimes.
You procrastinate.
Well, there you go. You procrastinate.
With age comes wisdom. I had my first child, I was very young, and I just went along with it. And when I had my second child, I accumulated that much, a couple of years of wisdom. And having a child changes you. And believe it or not, I was still quite young. I worried in that second pregnancy. I didn't worry in first because I realized then how many things could go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as we age, we can think about and we know about and we accumulate this knowledge, this experience. And so we can, especially women who can look and see many things at one time, we can be concerned, and it takes work to kind of get over that and to be fearless or to be in a sense of faith.
It's a lot more work. Even I, like I'm getting 48.
Oh my God.
But it's a lot more work to function on a daily basis than, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I can see the pattern that the older, the more work, and maybe, so I can relate to the idea of it. I don't usually, I wanna just read through, show you a few more of these. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the ability to show up and be seen, which everybody here is doing so beautifully. And by the way, this is why it was so scary to sing for me. It's the ability to show up and be seen. If you think about it, when you play an instrument, you can hide behind something. If you're playing the piano, I'm sitting at a huge thing, right? If I'm playing the flute, I'm doing something with my hand. Anything you play, you're holding. When you stand up and sing, just like speaking, it's just you. And there's nothing to hide behind, which makes it that much harder. And your instrument is inside you and you can't see how to work it. You know, it's very different. So this was about a work environment that I don't need. So I mean, you just may find this interesting. But countless CEOs and senior executives lament the death of creativity to drive needed innovation, but fail to link shaming, blaming, or silencing cultures they lead with, right? So like killing people's vulnerability also kills their inspiration to be creative and free and imagine and do all of those Shavuot type things of discerning and imagining. Well, it's that even for employees, it's professionally risky to chance being ridiculed or ignored or cut from the team. So, you know, we talked about a little bit this Torah being a gift. And one of the things that I just thought it would be good to helpful to verbalize is, what does this mean that Torah is a gift? Like, what is Torah? Like, we know what the Torah is, right? But like, why is it a gift? Like, why is it something that we're told and encouraged to embrace and be grateful for and all those things? Yeah.
Torah is where we give up is to be Jewish and what the rules and mitzvot, the command, mitzvot, all these statements of loving kindness, compassion, tzedakah, and all this stuff. That's the root of what we Judaism.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And while you were saying that, I was reminded of, I don't know that we often hear it from this point of view in Reform Judaism, but it's something that resonates with me, which is that the idea that whatever you believe God is, that there's something out there that loves you personally and loves us so much that they're like, here's wisdom for how to have a beautiful, meaningful life. And it's a gift for you because you're loved and somebody wants you to feel loved. So when you think of Torah, to think of this idea, somebody loved me so much that I get this gift of wisdom of how to make life meaningful, which is why we want to cherish it so much. Because it helps us understand the meaning of life, of giving and of receiving, you know. So that's why this idea, like oftentimes we hear that Jewish people are the chosen ones, right? So that doesn't sit well with a lot of people because, well, what does it mean that like my friend in India is not chosen and they're not as good? So the way I personally see it is, no, it doesn't mean that. Just because one person is chosen for one thing doesn't mean another person is not chosen for something else. But we have this idea, I think there's a way to look at it and not put other people down and say, we were chosen by these rules.
Children, like you see, your children, I mean, saying you know, the children like you're better than somebody.
Right, I don't think it has to mean that though.
See, I mean, you bet, you better than anybody. Better than anybody.
I don't think chosen just means you're chosen, doesn't say what you're chosen for.
I think it's
Doesn't
many
mean it's
people
good or bad.
understand this concept, especially in this. With this concept, the chosen people, but we were chosen to assume this responsibility of Torah, so maybe we can show it to others, not because we're better, but because this is God trusted us with, and this is up to us to show how we.
But if you think about it, if you look at your life as if you were chosen to do good, it just makes you a better person. Like that's it. I think it's that simple in some ways.
Like Moses, wasn't he chosen?
Yeah.
I think we're chosen, but we need to choose also.
Yes.
Chosen. You can be chosen.
Yeah, he was pushed.
It was up to you.
Moses wasn't
You
chosen,
let me
he was
choose.
It was,
So was Anthony.
Well,
So was Abraham.
And he was, but he was chosen, God knows him.
God,
Okay.
yeah.
well, on some level, you could also think about it, that we are all chosen for something. I was chosen to be doing this job. Right?
But I don't
Like-
agree
like-
that it makes us better than
It doesn't
others.
make you better.
I think
just makes
it gives us a chance to be better maybe than we used to be, or.
Why should it be better? It is, I'm choosing you to wash the dishes.
Exactly.
Because you will,
Right.
you will be a better.
Do such a good job at it.
Right, but I think that just, oh, sorry, I didn't see that there's one last.
But you asked about.
If you're, so, yes, I did, I talked about, yes, so,
Like it is, it's our support. It's our support system. And for us to use, to guide us for everything. I mean, it's very important.
and it's,
And it's our guide, it's whatever you want it to be, it's everything. It's literally our support.
and it's and I think Rabbi Dan uses this word a lot, it's the link, right, that connects us to our past, and it's the link that connects us to our future. So in order to get something that meaningful, the Omer process is a gift of take this time to say, like, am I happy? Is there any fear in my life that's getting in my way of living, as meaningfully and purposefully as I could? I like to look at, I like to look at it as like, is everything uncovered? Like sometimes there's little pockets or corners of ourselves that stay hidden through like denial. Nope, it's not there. Like, I don't want to deal with, I don't want that now, or I feel ashamed to admit it, so I'm gonna put it in this pocket. So I think this process of uncovering and unpacking, we can't be that open and vulnerable all the time, all year long. So I think what's nice about Judaism, it's like, hey, spring cleaning, let's take time to make sure all of our pockets are emptied out.
But I really still don't see the relationship or the similarity between the period of the youth before.
Between the what?
Before Shavuot is going on, that month.
Oh, yes.
Right, which is totally intersection and coming up to the point where like a crescendo.
Yes.
Coming up to that point. And all my years, I was always Jewish, I really never, know anything about what the owner was about, so this was there. But I just, all I knew is that I couldn't get married. I had to take yeah, but
Yes.
I know that the book that Rabbi Karen wrote has a depth, which she brought into it.
Yes.
But by itself, I used it was the collection of the wheat. Really? This is a big deal. Collecting of the wheat, and I'm still struggling with that having any kind of meaning. I mean, when somebody writes a book and other books have been written about it, then I can see what they put into it. But by itself, I don't see it the same as the period before high holy days.
I like the link that, because really the first month is Nisan.
Right.
And
Does that, you all know what that means? So first, right, so in Judy, I just want to make sure they understand what you're about to say. Right, we learned that Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the new year, but in truth, the first month of the year is Nisan, when it's Passover, which is freedom.
right, so Rabbi didn't have to mention where we were discussing other things. And what I like is that here it is, and 6 months later, it's like half a year. So you're almost going through the same thing that you would do for Rosh Hashanah with self-examination, all of these things that we're doing right now with the Omer. And it's like
I don't wanna say second chances, it's like you have 6 months, it's like half a year, it's time to do it again. And it's a lead up, and then you have Rosh Hashanah. And I just like it that it's right there, half a year.
It's just it's an opportunity, and you're right that, you know, for better or worse, right? If you were in a Orthodox community, it would be a huge deal because they center their whole lives around it, you know. And, you know, reform is different, and reform is like a little bit more of a, like, let's pick and choose what's gonna be the most important things we focus on it, and just traditionally, the Omer has not been something that's been brought to the front burner in a lot of reform and even some conservative things. That's the nature of being less observant, is you don't put as much weight into everything you do. And I think Rabbi Dan was like, we never do this because we're reform, and I want people to know what it is, because it's so different. So that is probably the reason behind why you're like, I didn't know about this, you know.
The Orthodox student during this time.
I mean, for sure, there's an every day, you say the blessing and you count it, right? And there are certain restrictions things like not getting married, men don't shave, people don't shave. Like there's a whole slew of things, but there's one day in the middle of counting the Omer that you are allowed to do all those things, which is called Lag BaOmer, which is probably something you've heard of. Lag BaOmer, and it's, what does it stand for again? It's Lag is the Lag, yeah, the numeric value of that date is what Lag,
And it's something about Rabbi Akiva.
Used to do the
yeah.
flags, do that with children making flags.
That was for Yom Ha'atzmaut, probably.
Maybe
Usually there's a big bonfire, and it's like just this like one day, exception day in this period of time. So one thing that is so beautiful that I love about Judaism, and it's almost time to stop, is Judaism is awesome.
33, sorry.
33, right, is Lag BaOmer, which is like close to the end, so at that point, what's the point, but whatever. But one thing Judaism is so good at, right, is if you think about what Shabbat is, and I tell all of our B'nai Mitzvah kids this, Shabbat starts and ends with a ceremony, with bookends, right? Shabbat starts with lighting candles, saying the Kiddush, and blessing the challah. It starts and then it ends with the Havdalah ceremony of lighting a candle, saying Kiddush, smelling the spices, right? So there's these bookends, and you literally say a prayer that says, we're now transitioning from sacred time to regular time. You say a prayer to bring in Shabbat that says, help me now realize that I'm entering a holy sacred time of the week. And then you say a prayer, Hamagdil, that helps you understand Hamagdil being Kodesh Lechol, the difference between holy and regular. And that's what Elul and the Omer is. It's like, let's on a bigger scale, take this chunk of time and make it just a little different. And by breaking up your routine, it helps us be more reflective and have a more meaningful life, which I just think is ultimately the goal of it all.
Question. If Rosh Hashanah is a new year, I don't understand why that is not the first month, instead of Passover, which is not, Passover is not the new year.
Because then you'd have nothing to talk about.
A thought that says that originally we had the year was 6 months, and that at the beginning of the year was a Passover and at Rosh Hashanah. And that beginning of thought accounts for the discrepancies in how long certain people in the Bible lived.
You know, and right, there's still beginning.
That you're doing March 7th,
Right, well, in some ways, for people who have kids, the year starts, June, September to September, the school year. So I think, all over the world, people see things differently. And I lied, there's one more last thing that I was gonna say is, there's a last thing to the last thing. Another beautiful thing that Judaism does is bring our attention to things, even if they are painful or difficult, because better to acknowledge than to hide from it. Right, so by counting the Omer every day, it does bring you more aware of the passing of time. But maybe you weren't aware of it before and you were taking it for granted. And, but I've seen like just acknowledgement when we go to bed at night, and this is another class, but when you go to bed at night, Judaism seals that when you sleep, it's a mini death.
Yeah.
Right? And that when you wake up, that's why there's a certain prayer saying, thank you for returning my soul to me, it's a prayer saying in the morning. But the beauty of that is that it's never gonna be, if you acknowledge that on a daily basis, it's not a one day, oh my God, I never realized life was so short, because on some level, there's a little acknowledgement of it every day. And by having a little bit of acknowledgement of it, which takes courage, you can live in a way that's hopefully more meaningful and not let the days go by.
I think that without it, a lot of people could be wonderful people, good people, like my husband, for instance, doesn't want to have anything to do with any of this, but he's a good man, yeah, he's a good man, so, I have a friend who is a little older and she's showing signs of dementia. And I'm trying to help her, and, taking her pills. And he's annoyed with certain time. And I think it all boils down to the fact that I have Torah in my heart, I have, I believe, and he does it. And I think it does something to you when you have faith and just blind faith as well as learned faith. It makes you a different person.
It does.
It really does.
It helps to be innocent.
become.
It helps to be innocent.
She knows what I mean.
Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, I thank you all. I don't know if this is standard for how they run other lunch and learns, but I enjoy having discussion and learning from each other. And also it helps you grow to share.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.